had it figured out.
Yeah, if you turn that up, what happens now?
So I can hear you through your mic.
You guys, the sound is the same whether Susan is muted or not. Did you hear me?
Bernie, can you hear us?
Yeah, but we can't hear him, so that's
Bernie,
weird.
you're muted.
He's muted.
I'm muted
There, he's
now.
unmuted.
Not now.
Well, funny, the little blue box says I am muted now.
Okay, we can hear you.
Joe?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Great.
All right, thanks, Pam. Okay. On.
Good evening, everybody. Let's call to order the Town of Basalt Planning and Zoning Commission meeting Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Happy New Year to you all. Roll call, Susan, please.
Okay, and I have it 6:06. Bill Marin,
Yo.
Kyle Oberg-Ketter,
Here.
Gino Rossetti. Gino? Can you hear me?
Gino, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, say
call,
yes.
Call and roll.
Oh, I didn't hear her.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yes. Eric Volzek,
Here.
Michelle Thibault,
Here.
Bernie Grauer,
Here.
Rob Lovett,
Here.
Cindy Hirschfeld.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum, and since we have 8 P&Z members, what this means in terms of our voting and discussion is that Cindy can participate as she's the alternate, but when it comes time to vote, I won't read her name. So if that's clear, so I think we're ready for the next item, Bill, which is the
Alrighty.
minutes.
Let's approve the minutes of December 15th, 2020. Does anyone have any changes or additions to make?
I have a question regarding the minutes. Did Robert Thorpe send in a email or letter since he was unable to connect? And if so, does that get added to this minutes or the tonight's meeting?
He did not provide any letter or email, so don't have anything to add.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question in the minutes about something Susan said. I can hold it till we have questions of staff, or we can try and clarify it now.
Is it something that should be
Well,
corrected in the minutes, Rob?
I didn't hear either of you.
Is it something that should be corrected in the minutes, or is it just a further explanation of something?
I think a further explanation within the discussions or questions would suffice.
Okay, why don't you just indicate maybe what your question is, and just so I can confirm that it doesn't need an amendment to the minutes.
I'm on page 10 of 11, the first paragraph. It says, Phillips says that last two sentences. Phillips said that Teague proved that 3 floors worked nicely under the adjusted height limits. She said the typology of the buildings was meant to be the same as was originally approved. And I'd just like some clarification as to what was originally approved and what the typology of the building refers to.
Okay, and we can do that in the explanation on the discussion
Okay.
of the item. Yeah, okay.
In that case, motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. We have a first, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
And let me just see that I could see everyone. Okay, good. So the minutes passed 7-0.
7-0.
Okay.
Who was the second on that, though?
Me, Eric.
Eric.
Eric. Alrighty, continued public hearing on the Forkfront Basalt application on Lot J of Basalt Commercial Park. James.
Yeah, thank you. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see it?
Yes.
Thank you. This is a continued public hearing on an application submitted by Forkfront Basalt LLC for sketch site plan review, sketch ESA, sketch floodplain reach 2 ESA, as well as PUD amendments to the Basalt Commercial Park subdivision PUD. And it's to construct a 12-unit residential building on Lot J of the Basalt Commercial Park. As was presented at the last meeting, the property is about a 12,000 square foot vacant lot that's located at the end of Emma Road, as you can see on the screen here. This is the Roaring Fork Apartments, and then you've got Emma Road going down. This is the Basalt River Lofts, and then the subject site is located just to the east of that. And once again, it's Lot J of the Basalt Commercial Park PUD. The proposal, as described at the last meeting, was for the applicant to construct a 12-unit residential apartment building, and they're requesting PUD amendments to permit residential on the first floor and to establish building height at 32 foot for this lot after the adjustments that they have made to the plan. And as was noted at the prior meeting, the PUD doesn't currently permit a 100% residential building on this lot and has a 30-foot height limit on this lot at the current time. At the last meeting, the P&Z heard a presentation by staff on the discussion items, and then a presentation of the proposal by the applicants. The P&Z also took public comment and provided P&Z discussion. Since the last meeting, the applicants have adjusted 3 aspects of the proposal, based on comments from the P&Z and public comments. Specifically, they've reduced the height to 32 feet by removing the parapet to screen the solar. They've also adjusted the Emma Road facing facade. Let me try to change my screen. so that they've lightened the colors, they've added some articulation to the facade, as well as adjusted the window pattern slightly. And then they've also adjusted the parking. They've worked with staff in the fire district to move all but 2 of the currently platted parking spaces that are across from Harry Teague's building or the Basalt River Lofts building. So there's two spaces now, parallel spaces over here, and they've moved the rest of the parking across to the east of the fire turnaround. And we'll go over that in more detail here in a minute. In reviewing these items, staff has provided some analysis in the memo on the adjustments. In terms of the building height, the majority of the P&Z seemed accepting of the height change to make the units more livable, but didn't necessarily feel that they needed the parapet to screen the PV panels on top. As a result, they've removed the parapet, as you can see here in this diagram. And so the new height that is proposed is 32 feet. Staff has included a condition that the applicant better define the height of the solar panels as part of the final plan application, as they have some more work to do with a PV engineer specialist. So they could do that between sketch and final to better define the height. In terms of the Emma Road facade, as I noted, let me go back, they have adjusted the facade per some of the P&Z's comments. They added articulation and massing with an additional vertical element, as you can see here. They have lightened the colors and the materials on the wood portion of it. And then they've also provided a bit more of a consistent rhythm in terms of the window pattern. And they can discuss that in more detail as part of their comments. Staff has included a condition requiring that the applicant submit more detail on the materials as part of the final plan application. And then, once again, in terms of parking, which was the other one, the applicants are required to provide 26 parking spaces for the 12 units. They had proposed to provide 26, but included 6 or so across from the Basalt River Lofts building. And there were some objections from the Basalt River Loft owners, so that they have adjusted the parking plan in working with staff in the fire district. They've now located 22 of the required 26 parking spaces to the east of the turnaround, so it's adjacent to their lot. They've maintained the 2 platted parking spaces across from Basalt River Lofts, which was on the plat of the subdivision originally. And then they have requested a waiver of 2 guest parking spaces through the PUD in order to preserve the existing significant ponderosa pine that staff has asked them to preserve and has required that as part of the conditions of approval. Staff is accepting of this scenario so long as the applicant is required to provide a parking management plan as part of the final plan application that would help discourage private vehicle use and parking. So this is represented as draft condition number 7 in the conditions of approval. If the P&Z is not accepting of the 2 parking space waiver from the guest parking, you could substitute the alternative condition number 7, which would employ a requirement that the applicant add 2 tandem parking spaces to get to the 26 parking spaces. Staff didn't feel that it was necessary in this case. We do have some buildings, especially out at Willits, that do have the tandem parking. Block 3 is one of those, which is the apartment building next to the roundabout. You know, it works okay, but staff doesn't really think it's necessary in this scenario given that there's pretty significant parking on the east end of the property in the development. Other conditions that P&Z could note and that were added since the last meeting include condition number 18, which requires that the applicant must provide must meet with the building official between now and the final plan review to ensure that they comply with the ADA requirements. There was a little bit of question about that as part of the last P&Z discussion. And then condition number 21 has been added, requiring that the applicant submit a final lighting plan as part of the final plan application, where they would strive for a balance of limited lighting while ensuring sufficient lighting for safety purposes. So that's kind of how it's been drafted. And then also condition number 22, which is that the applicant meet with the post office as well as private trash haulers before the final plan to ensure that their facilities for trash and mail are acceptable to those entities providing the service. So this evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, allowing for public comments, as it is a continued public hearing, and then providing P&Z discussion. And then ultimately, if P&Z is comfortable, you could recommend approval with conditions to the town council on the sketch plan review. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we have, this evening, we've got Aaron Ward, who is the applicant, and we also have Ramsey Fulton and Jeff Dahl on the line with the applicant group. Do you guys have comments?
Yeah, thank you, James. Appreciate it. Hopefully, after all the holidays that have happened, everyone remembers our prior presentation and the prior application here. We've certainly worked with the comments and have listened to the remarks and listened back to the last meeting and read the reports and have been in communication with staff about how we can address these things and how we can make modifications. James did a good job of introducing you to a lot of those items. Please feel free to reach out while I'm presenting if you have questions and would like to just get them addressed right away. I'm fine with that if that's a fair process or allowed in the public hearing. I don't know. Basically, you know, James kind of broke it into three categories. I kind of see it as actually more of four categories of things we've adjusted based upon P&Z comments and public comments. The first would be the building height. That's the most obvious one that, you know, we were earlier asking for an increase from 30 feet to 33 feet. And that was because of the zone district's allowable building height of 33 feet. After comments and remarks, we saw a need to possibly bring that down. But we wanted to maintain the quality within each of the 12 units as expressed to create spaces connected to nature with natural lighting, ventilation, mechanical drops that avoid sub 8-foot ceilings, etc. But we were also responsive to the desire to decrease the building height where possible. So by removing the parapet that screened the solar panel arrays, as everyone had recommended, that's the measure we took in order to deal with the building height and do what we could do without decreasing the quality of the spaces, as everyone expressed was, well, not everyone, but I should say most people had expressed was still desirable, and we certainly support that. The next item where we had adjusted things would be the materials. And let me just go ahead and share screen here. I guess I forgot to do that at the forefront of this thing. Let me go ahead and share the screen here. Okay, now, does everyone see my screen over here?
Yes.
An image of the building? Okay, so yeah, so as we dropped it from 33 feet to 32 feet, I think everyone understands that change. And then the materials is the next item worth discussing here. we further refined the exterior palette after understanding the desires to lighten up the materials. And so what we did primarily was just kind of basically further define what those materials are going to be after hearing comments and concerns. And one of the things we did is we kind of made the screen that is in the stair cores elements the same material as what is at the first floor, sort of ground, you know, the level where you can touch and feel and really soak in the energy of that material and be up next to it, and made it more of a natural blonde wood color that I think is, you know, is a connection to the human spirit, and it's, you know, a positive improvement. The next thing we did was we further defined what this area would become material-wise, and we ended up going to the measure of sort of, well, how do we demonstrate that we're not going to try to do something similar to what you see at Basalt River Loft on the upper floors, where it's a darker charcoal, almost blackish gray, and or what Skico has across the street, which was mentioned the last meeting. And so we felt the best way to do that was to illustrate the rendering a little bit better, but also go about selecting an actual product from the Barrage catalog that you guys could understand in reference to the other materials that were available in that catalog. And it's a zinc gray material, which is really a mid-tone. When it's in the direct sunlight, it's very light. When it's not, it certainly doesn't look black in any manner. So I think it's a good material choice for addressing that concern. The third category of things we are addressing here would be the facade and the massing. And there we made a number of slight adjustments in response to the comments and feedback. And the first thing we did was on the zinc gray frontage here, this area right here, we dropped the where this kind of frontmost element of the massing is to 30 feet to sort of respect that earlier limitation, and that bring the building down a little bit where we could without losing quality in the spaces and the units. So we felt like that was a positive change. It's a little bit better step back of the facade. We also lessened the zinc gray area of the siding, and we did so by adding this vertical white sort of element here, very similar to what is across the stair core from that. So we kind of made it less of a linear building, and kind of broke it up into more smaller chunks, and sort of made this area less massive by introducing this tower. And we feel that did a good job of sort of creating more relief in the horizontal appearance of the building as you look across the thing, not being all of the same style and material, and sort of breaking it up and having a asymmetrical nature to it. And then the next thing we did was, you know, obviously by popping this window, this area out, these windows in this wall mass, we did increase a little bit of floor plate area to these units, and these that just happen to be the affordable units. And so we did increase a little bit of floor plate area within those affordable units in this floor plan shift and this design change. And so that's sort of the third item. And then the fourth, which was already discussed, I'll go on to here. And first thing, I'll point out this little floor plan shift right here that happened, and then it happened again here on the second and third floor where it's increased. And then the last item, whereas we really understand the concerns of the Basalt River Loft, and we've removed the additional parking from in front of those units. We have instead worked through numerous options with staff and the Roaring Fork Fire and Rescue, and we're currently supportive of the recommendations of staff and or the alternate conditions with the tandem parking. But you know, adding more compact car spaces in this area really allowed us to squeeze in a little bit more parking here. That with the idea of adding a couple parallel spots over here that we're working with the fire truck access. We were able to get 2 of these in here, which we're happy to do. And then obviously keeping the ponderosa pines seems to us to be something that we really need to try to do regardless of what our scheme is. But the good news is that if you zoom into this graphic here, you can see that we're now no longer adding to the parking available or dedicated to Lot J's approval that is in front of the Basalt River Lofts, which is an important element in addressing their concern that came right before the last meeting. And then sort of final thoughts on this before I turn it over to other people for comment and questions and anything else they need to add is, I think this project was first envisioned in response to the 2020 master plan and the outcry of for rent, obtainable, affordable, and workforce related housing. We started by bringing these ideas first to staff and talking to staff about whether or not this project was something that would be supported in the community. They certainly felt so. We then took a draft site plan to the neighbors, and then we made adjustments to that site plan based upon the feedback from the Basalt River Lofts. We then made design adjustments after getting more feedback from the town staff, from Roaring Fork Fire, worked with Pickens County Emergency Access and Bach to make further design adjustments. And then finally, we have listened and made the adjustments for your feedback and the public comments from the last meeting. So in all, we feel this has been an inclusive process, and the product here and the subsequent ask for approval represents the best effort to create a transit-oriented, for-rent community housing that is of quality and representative of the master plan's vision. And at that, I'll just read one of the lines once again that I presented last time of the master plan, and that'd be theme 2, affordable and inclusive living. Under the objectives category, it states that we should study the barriers, the development of affordable housing, and consider options for reducing or eliminating such barriers. I think the very small amount of things we're asking for approval on today is an example of just that. And so at that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and Aaron to see if they have anything else to add. But then I'm definitely welcome to field any questions that come up along the way. Jeff, Aaron, do you have anything to add?
No, good job. No, that was good. I think the one thing about the solar panels is we've already started to reach out to some solar design companies and feel that we can reduce the overall height of the solar panels. But we still have to study that more until we get a handle on what's actually possible there.
Okay, should I be stopped sharing now, or what's the next thing that happens, guys?
Ramsey, can you please stop sharing so I could see who's everyone's little icon there? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Members of the commission, do you have any questions of staff or applicant? Please keep it to questions only, and we'll have comments after the public comment portion. Well, let's start with, let me just call on you in order. Michelle, do you have any questions no? Gino, questions?
The material that they changed at the bottom, it looks like wood. Is it wood intended to be wood, or is it some kind of a laminated product?
Well, I think today we're hoping it can be wood. We need to look at sort of long-term sun exposure on that elevation and see if that's the right solution, and also talk to Basalt or the Roaring Fork Fire about that selection. But the idea is to create a warming wood-like material there, and we'd certainly like to see it be a natural product like that.
The only problem that I see is that when you sprinkle, you normally get the water on the wood, and the wood becomes horrible inside of 2 years. And just be careful of it.
Well, with the size of the planting aisle we have there, it's really just for decorative grasses and things, not a lawn. So I think we could probably do it with drip irrigation, but still some of that long-term graying would still result in any case.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Gino. Bernie, do you have any questions of the applicant or staff? You're muted.
I have no questions, thanks.
Thank you. Kyle, do you have questions? I saw your hand.
Yeah, they're actually all for staff. Is there a code for a maximum amount of compact car spaces?
There is a maximum limitation, is it 15%? You've got your code.
Yeah.
20?
20%.
Yeah.
20%.
20%. Okay. And then this is for clarification, I guess. Because we would be giving them a variance on parking, they then have to provide a parking management plan. And within that, then the green ride surcharge is required and is on the onus of a tenant now to pay for that.
Yeah, that's similar to what we've done out at Willits. We've applied that on Block 11 at Willits through a parking management plan. You know, there's other items that they'll have to contribute to, but you know, we've used some of the Willits apartments as an example there to carry forward.
So if they were providing 26 spots, there would be no parking management plan, and hence the tenant is not having to pay an additional charge?
Yes, there wouldn't be the requirement for a parking management plan.
And are there other options that we don't put the onus on the tenant to be paying for basically the applicant asking for providing less?
I suppose you could adjust it through the parking management plan review to, you know, require that of the applicant rather than have the tenant pay it through rent.
Okay. And then last question is, what is the code storage requirements? I was trying to find it and I couldn't find it.
There isn't necessarily a code storage requirement. There's no minimum, but there is in the affordable housing guidelines a requirement that they have to provide sufficient storage for the affordable housing units, and that there's no hard, fast code number to that. It's at the discretion of the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC. Who, during their review, looked at the sizes of the storage that is provided in terms of the exterior closets and felt it was acceptable. But there's no minimum code requirement for storage.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Kyle. Cindy, do you have any questions of the staff or applicant?
I do, and apologies if I missed this somewhere, but what is the projected selling price of these units, both the free market and the affordable?
These are for rent.
For rent, okay.
Voting, and in the last P&Z meeting, I projected rents for the larger units around $2,400 to $2,500, and the one bedrooms, which are pretty small efficiencies, but they do have one bedroom at the end, and the projected there was around $1,800, $1,750, somewhere around there. And then the three affordable category 2, so that would be set by the AMI.
Cindy, any further questions? Okay, thank you. Eric, questions or comment, or no comments, questions of staff or applicant?
Just last time we had a brief discussion in regards to traffic flow and movement of cars. Was there any further discussion about that at this time? Either from the staff or the applicant?
You know, we did have a discussion with Picken County about the traffic flow through the area, and I think the conclusion of that discussion was that potentially if the Roaring Fork Mobile Home Park redeveloped and you changed the entrance of the you know, you changed, how you would come in off of Emma Road, that potentially we'd see some change. But, you know, kind of the issue really is that the commercial businesses that are up there on the corner are relying on all that parking that's there. So there's no real fix on that area. And we kind of recognize that, again, this is a private road. You know, Picken County is a major landowner. The largest landowner is the Real America Apartments. So there really isn't a good physical improvement that you could make and still keep the commercial businesses there viable and compliant with their current parking easements and parking arrangements that they have. Anything, James, that you can add to that?
We kind of looked at the concept of carrying the kind of like an alleyway back behind River Park Center. But when we looked at how that would lay out, it would get into significant wetlands and it would require some significant fill back there to get enough room for that kind of scenario to work. So it didn't seem feasible, but we kind of talked through that scenario.
Cool, thanks. Bill, that was my only question at the moment.
All right, thank you, Eric. Rob, questions, please.
Two, now, Ramsey, when you talked about parking, you didn't address the two conditions that we were offered by staff. Would you care to weigh in?
The two conditions that were offered by staff,
We were
meaning,
offered condition 7 or alternate condition 7. One
Yeah.
was with,
sure, I guess I concluded that we're in support of the two options that are the site plan that we developed. And we'd also be in support of the tandem parking if P&Z felt like that was the better solution for us to go with. So I don't know that we have a strong opinion on either of those, and we'd be happy for a recommendation from P&Z. Aaron, do you have any stronger thoughts? Is there one way you'd like it to go or the other?
I haven't seen how the tandem parking has worked in Willits, so I guess I don't really have an opinion. There is there is a lot of parking within the PUD itself, basically between the Roaring Fork Apartments and the Basalt River Lofts. That's all parking. I don't know if staff's been able to, when they go back there, or excuse me, P&Z members, to see that if it's too snow covered, but there's about 50 spaces between those buildings that are largely unused. I have been doing, it's anecdotal, but since the last P&Z meetings, I've been taking pictures every time I have to go up valley, and I have rarely seen a car in those 50 spaces. And it's taking some pictures, but that's minutia. But it's there is a lot of parking in that center area, and I'm not sure of the who those spaces are dedicated for, or which development, or if any. But I figured that is of note to point out that is all parking along there.
thanks. And then Susan, now could we clarify in the minutes the typology of the buildings that was meant to be the same as was originally approved?
Yeah, maybe just repeating some of the history that happened. Basalt Commercial Park was a very old approval. It had its own set of design guidelines, and basically the buildings at the eastern end were small and the buildings at the western end were taller. And most of the lots turned out not to be developable because of the new floodway mapping. So the town of Basalt, as part of the implementation of the river master plan, paid for re-subdividing all of the parcels to get developable parcels. So we were actively really working with the property owners because we wanted their participation. So originally, these were, on the eastern end, were smaller buildings with a lower height. And when we were negotiating with the property owners, particularly Harry Teague, expressed the desire to have a higher first floor plate height and more ability to have architectural features and everything else. And so we were very anxious to work with the property owners because we were really wanting to implement the river master plan. And so we amended the.
Harry was not granted that, correct?
He was granted the higher, originally it was lower than 30 feet. And so it was only gonna allow 2 stories, but we raised it to 30 feet. And kind of the aha moment after we did that was now the underlying zoning allows 3 stories, the underlying C3 zoning. So it makes sense to do 3 stories, particularly since he had a mixed-use building. So when he came in, he presented the architecture. We went back and looked through the minutes, and we didn't find anything that was kind of indicating that staff told him he had to make it look like 2 stories, but I think that was part of his argument that it made sense. More of the discussion had to do with the grow wall that he had on the building, because he had this grow wall, and he spent a lot of effort to try to have enough soundproofing between the highway and the building. At the time, we were under the 1999 master plan, which we had typologies, and so we were under the 99 plan, and then later we adopted the 2007 plan, and then we adopted the 2020 plan. And there was an incremental density bump increase in the typologies in our master plan between what we were doing in 99, which is what Harry's building was approved, and where we are today. I think the other thing that I think that's the main point that I wanted to make is we were looking at the 99 master plan typologies, and his height was 30 feet. He, at the final stages when we went through the minutes, actually proposed the solar panels, which weren't in the initial submittal, and staff said that's a good idea. Our code doesn't allow that as a height exemption, and so we concurrently processed that height exemption that is in the code at the same meeting that we were approving Harry's building, and then indicated that Harry's building would be regulated height-wise on the solar panels by the by whatever came out of the code amendment. So that was kind of the direction. He wasn't asking for anything higher than 30 feet. Like I said, the discussion was more on the solar panels, and we were reviewing it against the 99 plan, which, Bill Marin was on the P&Z at that time, and he might also kind of maybe pipe in on this, but we have kind of incrementally densified our idea of our typologies from 99 to 2020.
Oh, yeah, I'll concur with that, Susan. That's kind of what we did. Bernie will agree with me as well, because he was part of that discussion. But that's been the evolution of our master plan in that direction.
And I will, just because to respond on the wood issue, is that, we can put the applicant in touch with our building official, but remember, we just adopted the Firewise construction, and it did not outlaw wood, but it may not be as simple as putting wood siding on the building. So that's a discussion that they need to maybe have earlier than later.
Yeah, and there's a condition that they have to demonstrate compliance with those wildfire mitigation regulations as part of the final plan application.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, we're done, unless anyone else has any further questions to ask of staff or applicant. I don't see any hands going up.
Oh,
Right.
Kyle does.
Question.
One more, just, and maybe it's just, it's not so much a question, but a thought. The the easternmost parallel parking space on the south side of the property would be a pretty hard parking space to use if someone's parked on the westerly parking space, just as a thought of design and functionality. I guess that's to the applicant.
Well, that's more of a comment than a question, but when we go to comments, we can delve into that a little further if you wish. Let's open this up for public comment if that would be appropriate, I think. Susan, let's open it up at 6:49.
Correct, and I think we have 2 people in queue, and just to make an announcement that if you go to the agenda online, you can hit the link on the second page of the agenda packet, and it'll bring you up as an attendee, and then we can elevate you to talk. You can also dial 1-669-900-6833 and put in the webinar ID 950-3721-6079, and the passcode is 861166. And if you totally have a problem, text my cell at 970-379-1514, and we'll make sure that you can provide comments. So, James?
Yeah, so we have two members of the public. I'm gonna start off. It looks like we have Jeff Stoner here first. Jeff, can you hear us? Jeff, I think you're muted. Jeff, can you?
Yo ho ho.
I can hear you.
Yep. Am I good?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, so my name's Jeff Sterner. I spoke at the last P&Z meeting on the 15th. I'm the president of the Basalt River Lofts Owners Association and purchased my unit here in 2013. It's the one that will overlook, or it does overlook Aaron's property. Harry wanted to be with us tonight, but he had some family obligations to tend to, so he's not present. Yes, I appreciate the parking adjustments. It didn't quite make sense to me to assign, 6 or 7 parking spots across from our building to Aaron's development. So I'm glad to see that those have been moved over, and I do understand that the 2 that had originally been platted, will still be attached to his development. I guess I'm still a little bit disappointed with the discussion around the height variance. And as Susan mentioned, I think sort of the matter is granting the height variance brings greater density. And so back in 2012 and 13, when I was looking at property, I went down to Willits and looked, and it just wasn't for me. And, no offense for anybody that lives there, but the buildings were too big, too much traffic. It seemed a lot like living in Denver. And when I came down to Emma Road and saw Harry's building, I pretty quickly fell in love with it. It's been a great space for me. I live here full time, work out of the house. With the 33 feet or the 32 feet now, I mean, had we stayed at 30 feet and the 17 parking spots that were originally platted, I mean, none of this discussion about where's the parking going to go, what about the traffic, we just wouldn't even be a topic of conversation right now. So while I understand things in the town have changed, when I go back to that 2003 PUD zoning and restrictions, I mean, some of the things that those zoning restrictions wanted to maintain was, and I pulled this out, but maintaining Basalt's small town character within the Basalt Commercial Park. And so, I mean, it was specifically done and written in such a way so that this end of the street didn't become dense like Willits is. And we're talking about having this big, you know, it's nicely designed, but it's more fitting for a Willits location versus next to our building that's in smaller size that conformed with those height restrictions. But I understand that the town wants the density, wants the more attainable rental apartments. And maybe one way we can get there, I mean, I think we've lost the density argument, but maybe there's a way for me to salvage, you know, not having a very large oversized building next door to my home, is by maintaining that 30-foot height restriction. And the real effect of that is, and I'm sorry, Aaron, but the $2,500 monthly rental for the 2-bedroom, we're not really talking about affordable housing here. I mean, cops and teachers and rank and file ski co-employees aren't going to be the ones living in those units. And so in effect of keeping that 30-foot height limit, you're going to lower the ceilings within the apartments, which will actually suppress the rents that he'll be able to charge. And so from a town perspective, and building out more of the affordable and obtainable housing units, let's stay within that height limit. I know it's going to hit Aaron's margin some, but you know, loans are cheap these days, historically low interest rates. So I think it's something you could deal with. For a developer to come in and just ignore those PUD restrictions, I mean, it's just a little frustrating to me, because going into it when he bought the property, I mean, he would have known. And so I think it's rather unfair to those of us that are here and that have bought in to this street, into this development, thinking that we'd have a similarly sized building, for the town just to change their mind about that, is just really frustrating. Anyway, that's all I've got. Thanks for adjusting.
James, anyone else to speak?
Yes, we have John, I think it's John Helm, and I'm gonna, John, can you hear us?
Yes.
Welcome, John. Please try and keep your comments to within 3 minutes, please.
Thank you.
I bought here in 2010, and the PUD that was in effect then was very important to me. What I really like, and what I like about our building, it is residential and commercial, meaning that during the day when I go skiing, they can park in my parking spot and I don't care. When I come back, that parking space is open for me and it's not crowded here at night. It's quiet. During the day, you know, Harry has his architectural office. We have another architect here. We have the We Cycle here, and we have a nice mix. And by now you're going to end up putting 12 apartments, probably another 30 people, 26 cars, because you're getting 26 parking spots, including 2 in front of my building. So yes, I'm a little frustrated because this was going to be like a small community, quiet, not like Willits. When I bought in 2010, I could have bought a penthouse in Willits for what I bought here. I didn't want to be in the city, or I'd be in the city, or I'd stay back in Syracuse, or I go part-time in the summer. Anyway, that's my speech. I'm done. Because I know I'm not going to change anybody's mind, so it is what it is.
Thank you, John, for your comments. James, any more comments?
That's all we have in the attendees section on Zoom. Susan, have you received any?
No, I don't have any text, and I don't have any emails from anyone indicating that they would like to speak.
All righty, Susan, let's close the public comment portion of the meeting at 6:56, and we will move on to commissioner comments now. Michelle, would you like to start?
Yes. First, I want to thank the applicants for the modifications they made to the southern elevation with the additional articulations, the color changes, and the material variations. That really makes that side of the building a lot more appealing, so thank you for that. I am curious about the treatment and the protection to that ponderosa pine. If there's going to be a silvicell or something, you know, for that root system under all that paving. I'm a little concerned about that.
We gotta save a fucking pine tree. I'm sorry.
You might want to mute yourself. I'm in favor of the parking as it is. I don't think the tandem parking is ideal, and I like keeping the parking away from the river as much as possible. So that's my feedback, and I appreciate the condition in there of having the height of the PV panels reviewed before final. So thank you for adding that in.
So Michelle, well, then I think everyone else, when we do our comment, can we weigh in on the two number 7 options, the parking options, the one as stated or the alternate one? Do you have a thinking on that?
Yeah, I like the one as stated. I'm not in favor of the tandem.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Gino, comments, please.
No, I too appreciate the effort that the staff and the applicant have gone through over the last couple of weeks, and I like the parking as it is. I like the height as it is now, and may not be the greatest, but I do think he worked at and got an improvement, more improvement in the design facade materials. So I'm comfortable and hope this passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Gino. Bernie, comments, please.
Yes, I think the applicant's changes and staff recommendations have improved the whole project, which was acceptable to me at its face. I will point out that this property is within the town of Basalt, and the 2020 master plan, people did want to keep small town character, but they realized the importance of densifying what's in the town as a way of not encroaching development outside the town in open space, farm and ranch land. And we are getting pressure from that on the far east side. A ranch owner says they have the right and deserve to develop a very dense, scores of apartments, not close to public transportation, transit-oriented, not close to city services and retail. This all is. Having said that, I find this not to be a terribly large residential project. And I think the fact that 33 feet was the ask on the PUD was quite minimal. The fact that the developer took it down to 32 is a very nice step of listening to the neighbors' concerns, and the parking resolution appears to be satisfactory. I am against the tandem parking. I don't think we need more asphalt near the river. I am in favor of the staff proposal, and I find the added height inside the apartments to be of particular benefit for the smallest and most affordable apartment dwellers. They need it the most, and they're going to get a very substantial benefit of that out of that additional height. So I'm in favor of the project with the improvements and amendments, particularly to the exterior. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Kyle, comments, please.
My only comment was regarding that one parking spot and the actual usability of that if you're driving into the community. But other than that, in favor of the proposed parking plan, but not in favor of the green ride surcharge. And I think that should be a discussion maybe that happens at the final approvals. That's it.
Thank you, Kyle. Cindy, comments, please.
Since I wasn't able to attend the previous meeting and discussion of this project, I don't have any comments on changes from that discussion to this. Just a few quick comments. I don't have a strong feeling on the parking one way or another. I do think it looks, aesthetically I like the project. And I do want to acknowledge the two residents who spoke up. I hear you. I do really understand that, wanting to retain that rural feel of that part of the street. While acknowledging that, I want to say, it is a good location, I think, in the overall context of town. Where it's situated and the project size, I don't foresee it, bringing an overwhelming amount of traffic to that road that the infrastructure would not be able to handle. So, if I would be voting, I would be in favor of the project.
Thank you, Cindy. Eric, comments, please.
Sure. I'm gonna bring something up, a pet peeve of mine. Number 22, talking about mail and trash. I would like to expand that to include not just trash, but recycling and composting. It's an effort that we're all making in town, so a small modification. I want to bring up, talk about what Kyle was talking about as far as the green transportation fees. I'm actually in favor of them, but I agree with Kyle's philosophy of not putting the onus on the renters as much on the developer. So I would not be opposed to kind of wordsmithing a way of kind of doing that in a way that doesn't hit the renters as much, especially since a quarter of this project is affordable housing. As far as the parking goes, I agree with everybody else. I agree with the original submission without the tandem parking. And then I do want to, Cindy started talking about it. I think it's John Helm mentioned it. I know this came up at the last discussion. I think the project's a good one, but I think we're missing an opportunity for potential office space and potential jobs in town. I know this is something Rob's brought up in the past, and it's something that's also in the master plan, that, we don't necessarily want to be a commuter town for Aspen and the rest of the valley. It's not enough necessarily for me to be opposed to this, but philosophically, it could have worked to have one or two office spaces in here. I like the project. I like the work that developers worked with, and what Aaron and Ramsey have come up with, and the changes in meeting us. But just think it's a little bit of a lost opportunity there. So just a comment on my part about that.
Thank you, Eric. Rob, comments, please.
Well, let's start commending the applicant with the changes on the facade. I think there's improvements. It's a much better looking building for everybody to drive by and for those who live there. I think that was a worthwhile discussion that we had. As far as the parking goes, I personally found condition 7 to be onerous on the developer and the residents there, and I don't have a problem with the tandem parking. I just think it sounds like a cleaner, easier way to go. So I support the alternate condition 7. The height one I've been struggling with. We have rules for a reason, and everybody who builds anything wants to make their buildings taller and their ceilings higher. If you want to have tall ceilings, make it a 2-story building. You can have 15-foot ceilings, but in a 3-story building, you're going to be limited. So I have a problem with the height. I would stick with the 30-foot as is in code. But my biggest issue here, as Eric touched on, is that we're adding people and no jobs, and those people are just going to be driving up highway to go to work. Now, Bill, you often refer to your children living in your basement, and therefore we need more housing. I had 2 children in braces, and there was no orthodontist in Aspen. My children drove to Aspen or Glenwood to get their braces tightened. So the more people we add, I think this is an opportunity, and we don't have that many of them, to add jobs. I thought commercial on the first floor and residential upstairs was a much better use of that space than all residential.
All right, any further comments, Rob?
That's my comments, thanks.
Good, good. Thank you very much. It seems like we're kind of scattered around a little bit. So let's try, do we want to make a motion to approve as written first? You know, let's try this. Bernie is a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
First, and we have a second. Yeah, I see Gino. Gino second. You're muted.
Bernie, you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, I said as written. Can I add one minor addition?
If you wish, you're the first.
Okay, that at a later date, we will explore who the green fee is levied upon and how it is levied.
Okay. Thank you, Bernie. Gino, do you still keep your second with that minor?
Seconded.
And
Okay.
can I ask, the other thing that didn't seem that people were gonna disagree on is coming back at final with more detail about how to protect the ponderosa pine and extending the reference to trash to say recycle and composting.
Bernie, you okay with that?
Bernie, you're on mute again.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, now you hear me. It's confusing because my computer says mute. So, but anyhow, I agree to add those. That's in my amendment.
Okay,
That's
Gino,
just my amendment.
are you okay with Susan's clarification?
I agree to add the clarification.
Okay.
And as
Yes.
and the motion is that at final will address the contribution to the green parking and how that's funded, correct?
I agree.
Okay.
And Gino, do you still maintain your second at that?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Susan, do you want to call a roll call vote?
Okay, Bill Marin,
Yes.
Kyle Oberketter,
Yes.
Gino Rossetti. Gino.
Gino?
Yes.
Eric Volzek,
Yes.
Michelle Tebow,
Yes.
Bernie Grauer,
Yes.
Rob Levitt.
No.
Okay, so all members of the P&Z have voted. And so it passes by a motion of 6-1.
All righty. We have a motion that passes. Thank you all very much. I didn't even give any comments. I didn't really have any. But thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So now we move on to, let's see, commissioner comments and staff updates. Susan, please.
Okay, so since we last met you, we had a holiday, but we've still been working very hard on the Arbany Pool Project and the Basalt River Park Project, advancing both of those projects, and the planning department kind of has the lead on that. The town voted at its December 22nd meeting to purchase Lot 4 in the Mid-Valley Center, which is over there where TAC Fitness is, for a public works facility, so we're working on the closing documents on that. We also took title to a small parcel in Sopris Meadows, which is Willits to all of you. It's called Parcel 9. It's located just by the, where the restrooms and offices are that Public Works uses, and there's a parking lot there. There's a vacant lot. That was gifted to us by Sofico with no strings attached, so that's a really good acquisition by the town. It's zoned R4 PUD, and What that means is that the town can't use it for a public works facility, but it has had ideas in the past from daycare to affordable housing. Stotts Mill is still not totally ready to start construction. They've been working with their bank in their financing, so that's why you're not seeing any construction activity on that site, but as soon as they get that worked out, you'll see that work. You know, I think at the last meeting, James was ready to have a pre-application meeting on Jadwin. So, you know, there's been other talks, scheduling a pre-application discussions and a lot of inquiries on people who are purchasing property. So we've been really busy. Is there something else, James, you think I should mention?
No, a lot of pre-apps, you know, a lot of complaints, dealing with complaints, and so we're pretty busy.
Yep.
What are they complaining about?
Oh, well, by way of example, there's an unincorporated parcel off of Elk Run Drive that has had some construction activity, and the Basalt residents are not too pleased with what has happened.
And then, you know, we have everything
Is that
from,
the big store or barn, silver barn?
Yeah. Yeah.
then we have complaints on signs and all kinds of stuff.
Bernie has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a question regarding the big silver warehouse that's supposed to be a live-work situation, but in no way looks like it. It's pretty disruptive to the aesthetics of the Elk Run neighborhood, and quite a few people are unhappy with that. But my understanding is it was in Eagle County, and therefore P&Z had no purview of it. Is that correct?
Well, it's in unincorporated Eagle County, and she has indicated that she was gonna ask for a special review use, but has not, that hasn't really made its way through the Eagle County process. We thought we were gonna see the building permit, but we didn't see the building permit. But Eagle County staff has responded that, they have responded to one of the citizen complaints and said that they are in full compliance with all their permits and everything else. Our attorney is looking at it. You know, James and I had a discussion with our attorney today. So the HOA has hired an attorney, so I don't really know that I have too much more to add. It does highlight the discussion that we're having, highlights a need to really get a hold of how we deal with service delivery to unincorporated areas and how we use the town's right-of-way. Because the town had issued a right-of-way permit for connection to a sewer, existing sewer line that was in the town's right-of-way. And, you know, we don't really have policies that tell us that we can't do something like that. So it is something that we should address, I think, in the future, particularly well now that we're seeing, this is a little off subject, but now that we're starting to see a lot of fiber, requests for fiber, and other demands on our right-of-way, that we need better tools for how to really address when we can elevate this to a town council or a P&Z discussion. So there's a chance that we're gonna see a special review application from the applicant. They would need to do that before they had commercial activity on that property, but the gray building is already there.
Well, my question, getting back to the original matters, given that the appearance and structure is so completely out of place, really right in a single-family residential area. Do we have anything to say within the 3-mile zoning area? And is this special review, is this optional with the owner of the property, or is this something that the town can insist of? Because, yeah, I hear it quite a bit. There are an awful lot of people quite upset with what they feel is a very objectionable building in a single-family residential area.
Where exactly is the Silver Barn?
It's right off of Elk Run Drive, fairly near Columbine Court, really near Mountain Court, where Elk Run and goes into Albany Park. Yeah, it's on that end. So that was two questions.
I guess extending that question, Susan, if you don't mind, I totally agree with Bernie. It's a terrible project, and I just want a simple answer. If somebody asks me, did P&Z approve it?
Well, obviously you didn't approve it. There was no application. You know, normally what would happen if there's a land use application, we provide referral comments to Eagle County, and they don't have to accept our referral comments, but, you know, they're given an opportunity. But she went through just a building permit process to get her building that she built. And so she didn't trigger that special review process. Now, we understood that she's been talking to Eagle County about submitting one, and it was more for the uses and activities that would occur on the site. But you haven't weighed in on it, the council hasn't weighed in on it. You were not asked, you know, you weren't given the opportunity to weigh in on it.
Well, I think we should weigh in on it, and I ask that the P&Z adopt a resolution that we do weigh in on it.
You know, I don't want it to happen again.
Gino, I didn't hear your comment, I'm sorry.
Said he didn't want it to happen again.
Yeah. Well, I think
Well,
it would be fair to just ask us to work with our attorney to make sure that these things, you know, to look at our tools and see if there's other things that we can do to strengthen our tools. But we don't, you know, it is really difficult when the property isn't in town.
Well, could we still, as a board, draft a letter just expressing an opinion outside of all regulation?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, you could draft, I just don't know, maybe you draft a letter to the mayor. I think it might be appropriate, since you're a recommending board, to draft a letter to the mayor asking for the town to make sure something like this doesn't happen again, and
Here's an idea, Susan. Why don't you run this by Ryan and Bill and see what the recommendation is, come back to us at our next meeting, and then we'll talk about it further.
Okay.
Bernie and Gino, are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, good.
Good idea, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just curious what the loophole is that allows something like that to happen in the first place. Does this come up frequently, or it's pretty rare?
Well, you know, this is a unique situation just because it's kind of an enclave of land that wasn't brought into town when Elk Run was originally approved. And, you know, it existed with the same landowner for, you know, 30 years probably, and then they sold it. And the state law, the loophole is that the state law is really written to benefit a landowner, not, you know, municipalities. So it requires a property owner to agree to any annexation. So, you know, we talked to the current property owner about annexation, and you know, we weren't successful. You know, just like the tree farm, you know, we had discussions about the tree farm before they submitted an application and, you know, they didn't choose to come in town. Now, in this case, the town had already granted water to the property, so it made it hard. In East Basalt, we control the water, so, you know, we have a stronger tool. Most of our issues really come in West Basalt, where we don't have control over water or sewer. So the sanitation district in this case gave her an out-of-district tap and limited it to it was
To a
really
single-family
to a
house.
single-family house. So
Yeah.
it has a limitation. So she has to go back to them if she enlarges how much she wants. But the other complicating issue is, well, there's just a lot of complications, but we don't control zoning in the unincorporated portion of Eagle County. And if it was in Picken, you know, you might have seen other issues, you know, because Picken County allows very large homes. So does Eagle. Both of them allow very large homes.
So right now, Eagle County's approval for that is through a building permit as a single-family house.
So we'll take, I guess, our follow-up is that we will take your comments to the manager, the mayor, and our attorney, and we'll talk about it more at the next meeting.
All right, Susan, thank you very much. Anyone else have comments to make?
Susan, the lot that was gifted to Town of Basalt, I didn't quite catch where it was.
Okay, so you know where the green townhouses, where Kyle lives off of East Valley Road? So you know where the rugby field is, and then there's a rugby field, then there's the restroom building, and then you see where the town parks, so it's Public Works, and then the parking lot ends. So between where the parking lot ends and the green townhomes, there's about a half an acre.
But that was supposed to be the childcare.
Originally, it had restrictions for the first 10 years of its approval that it could only be used for childcare, but that 10 years came and went, and then they came in, they had platted it, and they lost their vested rights, so they would have had to do some affordable housing, so they never built on it, and so they gifted it to us with no strings attached. So that's really important. So you can see, if I can send you guys a picture of the lot. If it wasn't snow on it, you could tell exactly where it is because it's, you know, not really mowed land. It's right there. So it's between East Valley Road, the end of the parking lot, the green townhomes, and the bike path there.
Alrighty, any more comments from either staff or commissioners? Yes, Kyle.
And this is probably because I'm new and not quite sure of the regulations, but when this comes back up for final approval, what we just went through, are any of the items that were up for discussion tonight back on the table?
Well, our goal with sketch plan is to refine your decisions and not to revisit them so that the property owner can feel comfortable, you know, spending money moving through. Legally, can you revisit something? The answer is yes, but we really hope that the P&Z gives enough thought and the council at sketch plan that you can kind of move forward on those approvals. Now, anything you want to add on that, James?
Yeah, the sketch plan doesn't provide for any vested rights, but as Susan was saying, you know, there's an expectation of some reliance on the concepts anyway. but the details can certainly, you know, be up for discussion as part of the final.
You know, particularly, you know, obviously details, you know, if you, you know, architectural changes, or you could go back on the height, but what you don't want to do is throw the developer back to the drawing board. And that's what we've tried to get away from. You know, in my tenure here is we had approvals where we just, you know, we had 3 steps, and every step we asked the developer to totally redesign the project, and that's what we really are trying to get away from. But you know, really emphasizing what James said, they have no vested rights. It actually says that. They have a year to submit their approval, their application, because we don't want these things hanging out a long time and you have a new master plan and stuff like that. But, you know, if you want to refine things, we don't want to, you know, mainly that, I guess if the P&Z's ever uncomfortable, they can always spend more time in a review. Just kind of our advice, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty, any other comments to make? If not, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a first from Bernie, a second from Gino. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. You all have a pleasant evening.
Okay, so you're adjourned at 7:29.
Yes, we'll
Thank
see you next.
you.